Hey guys, I am DM Zone, this is Gamers Oasis. Let's get into this. So we're going to talk about Dungeon. The history of Dungeon, the board game, is linked to several other games from its time era. Games like Chainmail, Castle Keep, were all linked and were all played in the early 70s before Dungeons & Dragons actually got released. However, they were all made basically by the same people. I'll get more into Castle Keep in a few, but let's first talk about the game designer of the Dungeon board game. So David McGary was one of the many members of the Midwest Military Simulation Association, or the MMSA. David McGary was not the only member of that organization that were game designers. Other game designers like Dave Arneson, Dave Wesley, Gary Gygax, all of which I've talked about in prior videos. I'll have links in the top right corner for some of the videos I'm doing related to those people. I'm going to have more videos coming out, so make sure you hit the subscribe and the bell icon so you can see those videos when they come out if this is something that interests you. Mr. McGary was also a member of Mr. Arneson's Blackmoor home campaign. This was the campaign that Mr. Gygax was introduced to that changed a lot of his perspective on chainmail and was one of the main founding reasons why Dungeons & Dragons actually came about. The original version of this board game eventually did come out by Tactical Studies Rules, aka TSR, the founding company of Dungeons & Dragons. However, Mr. McGary did not reach out to those around him at first, much like Mr. Gygax, who reached out to Avalon Hill to try and produce his Chainmail and Dungeons & Dragons game. Mr. McGary was rejected by another industry leader, the Parker brothers. Mr. Gygax in 1972 expressed interest in the game, and in 1973, after a fierce game of Blackmoor, which the rules for this game were all over the place, but they included Dungeon and Brownstein. Mr. Gygax then introduced Mr. Gary to Don Lowry from Guiding Games, who Mr. Gygax worked for before forming TSR. Sadly, a deal could not be made at that point in time. Mr. Lowry was concerned about the cost of the board, maps, and that type of stuff, as it was not a simple print and required more color, which was more cost than he was willing to invest at that time. However, Mr. Gygax did have TSR purchased it in 1975 with the proceeds from Dungeons & Dragons, the original version. For a brief time, Mr. Gary even worked at TSR, though he left around the same time Mr. Arneson did in 1976. But that is for another video to come. And it is said that Mr. Gygax actually play-tested this game with his home game, the Greyhawk campaign. It was a big part of playtesting D&D. Mr. Gygax is one of those credited with additional contributions, which might be a generous way of putting it, in my opinion. I'm looking at you, Chainmail. I'm looking at you. Alright, so let's get into some of this other stuff. When this game was originally being playtested and when it was on its way to being released, it was mostly played over at Arneson's side of the Twin Cities. However, it was brought to Gen Con and was played by Mr. Gygax, and they had their own playings of it. Mr. McGary has a record that he tracked character lives on, the life, what they did and when they died and this type of stuff. He has about 20 characters tracked on this thing. It's the original playtests and what happened and this type of stuff of that time period that still exists. Ironically enough, the first entry on this for a character though is a McDuck, who played until his death. There were over 30 monsters, and the original classes were elf, hero, superhero, and wizard, which is a bit surprising because that's basically Mr. Gygax's a Mr. Jeff Perrin's Chainmail wargame. The same war game was used in Blackmoor, so you can see where these start to connect and link up with each other. A bunch of people, all playing in the same group or groups, all know each other loosely or closely associated with each other, play games that all share the same rules. When I say the same rules, I'm referring to Brownstein, I'm referring to Chainmail, and strategos. There's a void of a complete system, and nature deplores a void, if I was to paraphrase a popular phrase. Like Major Wesley's Brownstein and the aforementioned chainmail wargame, they all find links to the 1880 Strategos, a book on military wargaming by Charles Totten. Another was Strategos Inn, a purely historical game common with those type of game desires. Okay, so let's talk about Castle Keep. Castle Keep was a game that almost came to market but didn't. It was designed by a youth around 13, I believe, of age. The game was inspired by a pre-release testing of Dungeon the board game. Let's be clear though, I'm not talking about the current version of Castle Keep that is out there. This was a completely different game. This Castle Keep made it all the way to the peer review magazines of its time, where it was exposed for what it was. But due to the age of the young man who made it, they dropped it if he dropped it. There is a PDF out there. You can find it if you look for it online, but I don't feel comfortable linking the source at this time. Anyways, this man was named Louis Fallert, or aka Mr. Blue Petal, who sadly passed away in 2014. I made a video on Mr. Blue Petal a long time ago. I first started this channel. I did not like the tone or the context of some parts of that video, so I've since removed it. However, if you want to speak more on Mr. Blue Petal's version of Castle Keep and compare it to Dungeon and compare it to the relationship it has to the current version of Castle Keep, let me know in the comments down below. So let's get into the different versions of Dungeon the board game according to the wiki. These are the years and the classes that were made for each version of the game. The original has a very chainmail-like version, as I stated earlier. The second edition calls back to maybe it calls back to original Dungeons and Dragons, if you use the supplement books, 1 and 2. And if you consider the influence of chainmail, it kind of makes sense. The Thief and the Paladin were both added to the supplements. Dwarves were classic to original Dungeons and Dragons and anything that was really basic in the basic line of Dungeons and Dragons. The advanced Dungeons and Dragons had dwarves as a race, but they were not close to a class. However, dwarf as class could be found in BX, but you wouldn't find a paladin. Maybe the system they were going for was the one that followed BX, which is called BICME. BICME is an acronym for the basic version of Dungeons and Dragons that was out in 1989. It stands for Basic Expert Champion Masters and Immortals. The third edition feels like sort of a repolishing of the fourth edition, if I was to guess. It changes the rules, changes to maybe its package, the way it's marketed, that type of stuff. The fourth and fifth versions of the game were made by Wizards of the Coast, aka WotC. They introduced female characters finally to the game. The version I have here is the 2014 version, which has the classic 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons art style. I got it for a good price, about $25, and it's going to be a nice way to help my daughter jump into RPGs. She's not quite old enough to grasp and read the books she would need for full-on RPGs. This game is simple, yet there is a level of complexity that is hidden by the simplicity of the game. Take into consideration the rogue, the cleric, the fighter, and the wizard. All come from the original versions, which were technically at one point in time the elf, the superhero, the hero, and the wizard. All four of these classes are good at fighting different types of things. These things are found at different levels in the dungeon for the most part. The loot is different because levels that are deeper have better loot. This is a classic D&D trope of early D&D, which is the main part of this game also. See, in early D&D, it was more important to go get the loot and get out and go get home versus necessarily killing the bad guy. What is interesting to me though, is if the wizard wants to hang around the top levels and compete with the rogues' target dungeon levels, they might not even be able to prevent the rogue from accomplishing their goals before the rogue turns in their goal. It gets reached turns in the rewards to win the game. However, if they do stop the road, they're probably not very close to completing the goal that they need, the requirements they need to win the game. Therefore, they're going to have to go deeper into the dungeon to find it. The rogue, which is designed for the upper levels, will have a very hard time going deeper, whereas the wizard is pretty good in most places, but the requirements for it to win drive it deeper into the dungeon so they can get more and better loot. All the strategy, all the planning, all fades when the first dice is rolled. If you do not have luck with the dice, this is a game that involves dice. If it's not with you, it's not with you. So far, my daughter and I have played 2 games. She is cursed by dice. She has been crushed, which is a technical term, 3 times, which means that she has rolled double 6s 3 times for a very specific roll. This means that she has to change characters, and that character technically dies. What this also means is that she doesn't kill the bad guys often, even though she's attacking the target level for her character. And she's played different characters, obviously, because she can't continue to play the same one. So it doesn't matter where she goes, what level she is, what type of monster she's fighting. We're going to continue to play and see how it goes. When she saw me get a magic sword, she really wanted one for herself. I think what we're going to try and do is play a persistent version of this dungeon game, specifically designed for a 7-year-old, that will allow her to maintain certain items, certain values, certain whatever, while she goes back into the dungeon and win. And it'll still be a competition, but we will maintain a certain amount of items that we keep between games. Anyways, I hope you like my version of Dungeon the board game and the history I've put with it. If you want to see me break down this game more and look into this deeper and maybe get more into depth into the complexity of this game, let me know in the comments. Maybe I'll come back to this game in the future and do a deeper dive into it like I've talked about with many of the other videos I've done so far. Anyways guys, thank you for watching the videos. Hope you guys enjoy this. See you guys in the next one. Keep rolling those dice. Bye.